Hey there, y'all. My name is Cassandra, and I chose to do my research on how gender toy marketing affects child development. I chose this particular subject because I remember being a kid, growing up, and getting traditionally girly gifts for holidays and birthdays, and they were never things I actually wanted to play with. And that got me thinking, did those kinds of gifts, and possibly the assumptions tied with them, influence how I grew up? So I started my research with going to Walmart and taking photos of the toy aisles. I was particularly interested in the toys that were essentially the same thing, like Legos and pets and vehicles, and how they were colored and shaped differently to be marketed to different genders. For example, the pictures in this slide are both Lego toys, but they are styled very differently. The Friends set for Lego are always more rounded and are generally white with pastel colors, whereas the Ninjago sets are usually either bright colors, black, or a combination of the two. This reflects the information gathered in the study, The Gender Marketing of Toys, an analysis of color and type of toy on the Disney Store website by Carol Oster and Claire S. Mansbach. It was super fascinating. They used past research to back up their two hypotheses, which were essentially 1. That color palette and the play activity associated with the toy would determine what gender the toy would be marketed for, and 2. That the toys made for both boys and girls were more likely to resemble toys for boys only. Some of the past research they used came from Ellen Sider's book, Sold Separately: Children and Parents in Consumer Culture. Sider's quote that boys become their toys, girls take care of their toys, is pretty well exemplified by these two Lego toys. The Friends set, traditionally marketed to young girls, is a hospital set so that they can pretend to be doctors and take care of their patients. Per the LEGO website, this set is made so that kids can learn the value of caring for others while role playing as a doctor, ambulance driver, or a patient with this LEGO Friends Heart Lake City Hospital toy playset. The Ninjago set, on the other hand, is traditionally marketed to young boys, and per the LEGO website, is meant to get kids role playing exciting scenes from the LEGO Ninjago TV series with this super cool Jungle Dragon Ninja playset. Featuring highly opposable wings, legs, and tail, a jaw that opens and closes, plus a saddle for the ninja to ride in, it inspires the best imaginative play. So while the set marketed for boys is meant to inspire the best imaginative play, the set for girls is marketed to teach the value of caring for others. Additionally, Oster and Mansbach's assertion that toys associated with personal beauty will be more likely for girls only really stuck out to me as well. The Fur Real Glamalot's pet toys are a clear example of this, where the child is encouraged and expected to care for their pet's hair, which is modeled after human hair. I felt like the photographs here were also really good evidence for Oster and Mansbach's first hypothesis about color palette and play activity. The pet toys marketed to boys were generally bright primary colors or black in a primary color, whereas the pet toys marketed for girls were generally pastel colors, pinks, purples, and occasionally rainbow. Oster and Mansbach also discussed how the gendered marketing of children's toys can also have a tremendous influence on how children ultimately do gender. This is further backed up by another source I found titled Of Men and Machines Images of Masculinity in Boys' Toys by Wendy Varney. In her article, she argues that although we have been challenging masculine stereotypes, few, if any, have been overturned, and she discusses how the rigidity and often weaponized nature of boys' toys is a reflection of how Western society associates men with machines, which is overall detrimental to their perception of masculinity in the long run and makes it even more difficult to overturn those stereotypes. Varney attributes this to the fact that toys are one of the earliest and most influential technologies that children come in contact with. As such, we can expect toys to help children form their perceptions of gender. I found another look at the stereotypes perpetuated by toys in the article Free to Be, You and Me, Revisiting a Feminist Classic by Laura Levitt. In her article, Levitt discusses how feminists in the 1970s protested against violent and sexist children's toys that were being developed at that time, and the Women's Action Alliance also began the Non-Sexist Child Development Project. Letty Pogrebin in 1974 even challenged parents to not buy toys marketed just for boys or just for girls, and to reject toy weapons and the militaristic values they subscribed to the children playing with them, as well as those toys which encouraged a must-win attitude. Levitt stated that this placed children at the center of the women's movement at the time, especially because the Non-Sexist Child Development Project was in response to demand for a national feminist agenda that included children and the impact of sexist stereotypes. Another source I found to be incredibly interesting was the article Biology Doesn't Justify Gender Divide for Toys by Cordelia Fine. Providing more evidence that gendered marketing affects child development, Fine states in her article that developmental psychologists have found that children are very aware of the importance placed on the social category of gender and highly motivated to discover what is for boys and what is for girls. And she argues that this gendered marketing goes beyond just toys and into things like books and television shows as well. Additionally, she states that such gendered toy and book marketing reinforces gender stereotypes, which can affect the way children perceive their own gender in the long run. The last source I found I was immediately drawn to because it seemed to contradict my own experience. As far as I had seen on my trip to Walmart, the blue and pink aisles did not seem quite as defined as they were when I was a kid. However, the article by Elizabeth Sweet titled Toys Are More Divided by Gender Now Than They Were 50 Years Ago implies the opposite is the case. Sweet states in her article that even when gendered marketing was most pronounced in the 20th century, roughly half of the toys were still being advertised in a gender neutral manner. This is a stark difference from what we see today, as businesses categorize toys in a way that more narrowly forces kids into boxes. And surprisingly, she even discusses the Oster and Mansbach essay. Specifically, she discusses how they discovered that on the Disney website, the toys were explicitly categorized as being for boys or for girls. There was no for boys and girls option, even though many of the toys could be found on both lists. This is a reflection of the diminishment of the degendering trend that occurred between the 1970s and the 1990s. By 1995, gendered toys made up approximately half of the Sears catalog's toy selection. Unfortunately, this kind of marketing also completely excludes children that do not conform to binary gender. With that in mind, and with everything I've read, I believe I can say that gendered marketing of children's toys definitely has an impact on how children develop as they get older. Not only has the idea of gendered marketing being problematic been around since the 1970s, it was also protested by feminists at that time. We also see women like Cordelia Fine, Carol Oster, and Claire S. Mansbach making valid arguments nowadays for the problems with gendered marketing. Toys are some of the first things that people interact with, and continue to interact with for many, many years. It makes sense that they would influence our perspectives and our individual worldviews. Thanks for watching!